Welcome to Engage MH, the Power of Mixing podcast, Moët Hennessy's first portfolio show. I'm Angela Sauvé, Director of Trade Engagement, and I'm feeling effervescent today. Today, we are going to talk about one of my favorite topics, champagne. And you're not going to want to miss a second of this episode because we'll be discovering the world's most famous champagnes, Moët and Chandon and Veuve Clicquot. We'll also talk to an industry expert, Nicole Burke, on what makes champagne so special and why it should be on every wine list, on every table, and on every shelf. And I'm pleased to welcome back my bubbly co-hosts, Rich Buchanan, Laura Catlaw, Senior Managers of Trade Engagement. Thank you for joining me for this bubbly show.
I'm happy to be back. I'm feeling bubbly.
I'm happy for you to be back.
Yay.
I'm really I'm excited about every episode, but I love champagne. I love champagne so much. These are two of my favorite champagne brands, so I echo what you're saying. Do not log off because there's so much great information coming at you in this session, this episode, so stay tuned.
Champagne is one of my favorite things.
Oh, I like it too. I like it too.
A little bit.
I like it.
It is an interesting topic, though, you know?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic because, it is the world's most famous wine. Yet I think many Americans aren't familiar with what makes champagne champagne.
I agree with that. I think there's an opportunity maybe to share the magic of champagne with the world. And, I like to put a number behind things, right? So let's learn 5 things about champagne. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Only 5.
Only 5. Yes, you're going to have to hold yourself back.
Okay.
Okay, can I go first?
Yeah,
yes.
Of course.
Thank you. All right, so when I think of one of the most important things that we all need to know about champagne, it is that champagne is the epitome of celebration. Now, I feel like that's a statement that people have heard or thought of a lot, and I think it's lost its meaning a little bit. So I'm going to say it again. Champagne is the epitome of celebration. To me, it embodies what it tastes like to feel alive. You know what I mean? And if you think about it too, champagne is like fragrance, where every time you smell it, it takes you back to every memory you ever had when you wore it. It's the same thing with champagne. Every time you sip champagne, it's like you're sipping on every memory you ever had when you drank it, right? So it is the epitome of celebration, and there's no celebration too small or too large. That's why champagne shows up in every moment of our lives. So that's, I think, the number one thing you need to know about champagne.
I have to follow that.
You
Great.
do. Good
Thanks,
luck.
Laura. That was lovely. Point number 2, this idea of rarity. Holy moly, this is a huge factor in champagne. The Champagne region is small. And if you look at all the wine produced in a single year on planet Earth, champagne is less than 1%.
That's a very small amount.
Small.
Less than 1% of a thing.
And considering the amount of champagne that I drink, I can't actually believe that that's the case. But yes, it is far more rare than I ever gave it credit for.
Well, you mentioned something about the place, and I think it's important for point number 3 to state that champagne, real authentic champagne, has to come from one place on planet Earth. And that place is
Champagne.
Champagne, France. Yes, it is a region in France. You can travel there. If you happen to go to Paris, you can take a high-speed train there, get there in 45 minutes. It's an amazing, quaint, yet beautiful region. And when you think about the size of the region, it is quite small in comparison to other wine-growing regions. The entire region of Champagne is around 34,000 hectares. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're not often thinking in hectares,
about the size of my apartment.
It's the size of Rich's apartment here in New York. Actually, no. If we think about American cities, the whole region of Champagne will fit comfortably inside of the city of Las Vegas.
How many times does it fit into New York?
So if you think about the 5 boroughs of New York City. Let me do some rough calculations here. I think we're going to be able to fit it in about 2 times into New York City.
2 times.
But one of the most mind-blowing comparisons is that of the Houston metropolitan area.
We were just there.
Yeah. Hello, shout out to our Houston friends. This is bonkers. So the entire region of Champagne will fit inside of the Houston metro area 64 times.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of times.
Yeah.
It's so much smaller than I thought. Champagne, so
Right.
much smaller than I thought it would be.
And all authentic champagne has to come from that small
Champagne.
area.
And I recently learned that when you write Champagne, if you write it with a capital C, you're denoting the region of Champagne, versus with a smaller C, you're actually denoting the beverage, right?
Yes, that was wonderful,
Champagne of
Laura.
champagnes.
Yes.
Exactly.
There you go.
Very good.
We were only doing 5 things.
That was a that was a bonus. It's number
Bonus.
3 with a little star.
An extra. I had to put it in there.
Yes. Apologies to the listeners. We said 5. We're doing 6. Next up would be this idea of, this is a difficult wine to make. The struggle is real. The weather in Champagne is difficult. There are pages and pages of rules and regulations you have to follow. The soil is tricky. And we have these 3 grapes, Meunier, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and they struggle to grow often in this chalky soil. I mean, this is not an easy wine to make.
I mean, think about planting a plant in chalk.
Like literally take a box of chalk, grind it up in your blender, put it in a flower pot, and grow something in that.
And then try to make a beautiful wine out of it.
Exactly.
It's incredible.
But that's why I love Champagne, though. I love the idea of something beautiful coming from hardship. And the fact that, I don't know, it just speaks to me as a person. I think anyone can relate to that. And I think that's why the appreciation of drinking Champagne is so high, because of what it took to make it,
There's a documentary called A Year in Champagne, and I love this quote. Rich and I like to share this when we're out sharing our love of champagne. And the quote is, "We have the worst weather and the worst soil."
Yeah. There you go.
But the best wine. Oh, me. I'm the
Point
5th
5.
point. I'm the 5th point. Well, it's actually funny that we're talking about all the things that contribute, because there are so many champagnes, right? But how do you distinguish one from the other? And most importantly, how do you distinguish the 6 houses of Moët Hennessy champagne, the best champagnes in the world? And it comes down to the house style. So before I tell you what I think it is, I just want to have a discussion. When I say house style, how do you define a champagne style?
Yeah, it's what distinguishes the champagne itself, as you said. It is the experience that the house wants you to have when you pop open that bottle and pour yourself a glass. Because as Rich mentioned, there's a lot of rules. So it's a small region. There's a lot of rules. They have to use the same grape varietals. So a house style is how they take all those rules and make those decisions to create something unique.
Did you agree, or?
I'll add that. I mean, to me, I think it's the artistry. It's like the fingerprint, if you will, of the winemaking team. It's also the combination of tradition plus innovation as well. It's all these things that go into making each house unique and special.
Yeah. I think it is. You said it's the fingerprint. It's the human. It's the personality behind the brands. And we have 6 incredible champagne brands. And I know that we are here today to talk about 2 iconic houses, Moët and Veuve Clicquot. But each house of our 6 houses is so unique and has such a strong persona and consistency of that style. And I do think that's what sets us apart, and that's what makes us unique. And I think that's why consumers choose our champagne houses time and time again for how amazing our styles are.
It's consistency, right? Well, when you pop open a bottle of Moët Hennessy champagne, it's going to be a consistently incredible experience. And it's the culmination of the artistry, like Rich was mentioning. It's all these decisions from what grape varietals that the winemaking team is choosing, from aging techniques, sourcing, what vineyards are they selecting from. It's so many decisions.
Yeah,
it's truly magic in a bottle.
The artistry. It's the artistry. It's something that it's not technical. It can't be taught. It comes from within. And I think each house has a real special artistry to it.
And now it's time to shake it up with Nicole Burke. Nicole is a wine and spirits industry leader with over 15 years of hospitality experience, serving as the beverage director for top restaurants in San Francisco. And she holds a degree from San Francisco University in food science and nutrition. Nicole joined Moët Hennessy in 2013 as the United States Krug Champagne Ambassador, What a job. Before overseeing business development in the Northeast for Moët Hennessy's Champagnes and Wines. Currently, Nicole leads partnership and programming with top restaurants and hotels in New York City as a prestige account manager. Her innovative trade programs have received accolades from Wine Spectator, James Beard, and star chefs. What a resume. Welcome to the show, Nicole.
Thank you, team. It is really such an honor to be here.
We're so excited to have you.
I'm stoked. And you look fabulous. I love your dress. I love your jewelry. You look great.
Well, between you and I, we're very festive.
It's true. We're like a holiday explosion.
And, yep. Champagne is a great time
to celebrate.
So, Nicole, we have some questions for you. And we have to start out with this one. This is an important one. If you could have a glass of champagne with anyone, who would it be? What champagne and why?
I love this question. When I host dinner parties, which I do very often, there is always champagne. And one of my questions is that you could be seated at the table with anyone from history. Who would be at your dinner table? So I'm going to answer that in two parts. And one is, I would love to have lunch with the bon vivant Oscar Wilde, a bottle of Clos de Menil, and we would have a long leisurely lunch, and I'm sure it would be quite wicked because, you know, he had a wicked sense of humor. And then on the flip side of that, champagne is really known for being luxurious and celebratory, which there's no other wine like it. But I also really love to enjoy it in simpler moments. And so for me, I would be cooking in my mom's kitchen with my mom and my sister, and we'd be enjoying a beautiful bottle of champagne. This season, I love Veuve Clicquot Rosé because it's the cranberries and the pomegranates, so that would be my go-to.
That's a beautiful answer.
Yeah.
I like a two-parter.
Perfect.
Yeah. Beautiful.
I want to go.
Two is better. You can come to lunch.
Okay.
We can all travel back to time.
For a wicked moment with us.
sweet.
With Oscar Wilde.
Love it. So what was the first champagne that you tasted? Do you remember?
You know, I don't remember the first champagne I tasted, probably because I was enjoying myself so much. But I do remember the first time when I was studying to get my sommelier accreditation that I was tasting professionally with a master sommelier. And it was really how you tasted champagne, because I think we try to pigeonhole champagne into a still wine category. And it doesn't taste like a white wine. It doesn't taste like a red wine or a rosé. It's so tactile. So you have to approach it in a different way. And that was really my light bulb moment, that champagne was so unique and singular that, you know, and nuanced, where slight bitterness in champagne can be so beautiful, and that it's also wine in 3D. So you have to use your eyes and, you know, sometimes your ears, really all five senses to enjoy and taste. So
it's such a sensorial experience. And I love that you
Indeed.
called it like a light bulb moment. So let's talk about that. What was your light bulb champagne memory? What bottle or experience made you realize that champagne truly was something other than just a fun, bubbly wine? Do you remember what that bottle might be?
100%. The experience itself, I would say, you know, I gravitate personally to champagne. I love the freshness. I love the vivacity. And my first trip to Champagne was in 2011 on scholarship with Rune Art. And I was standing 40 meters deep in the Criers of Rune Art, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and just looking at this chalk cathedral where 5th century Romans were excavating these chalk quarries. And it was really that impression that Champagne is one of the greatest wines from beautiful terroir, but also the heritage and the people. As much of the fabric of Champagne is actually Champagne itself. And that was a moment which really was profound on me. It was a super suck punch, and I fell in love.
I think I just went like in my mind to the Criers, by the way, are caves in Champagne, as you mentioned, dug by the Romans. I had a visceral moment with you just now. That was so beautiful. So when we think about Champagne, we talked about it at the top of the show. You know, a lot of Americans don't truly know what Champagne is. And there are a lot of misconceptions and myths out there. So what are some of the common misconceptions and myths that you heard, and how do you overcome them?
Persistency. So one of I think the ones, and we've all probably heard this, that you get so excited because someone's going to bring you a glass of champagne, and then the bottle's at the table, and you're like, wah, wah. It's not champagne, it's Prosecco, and they're so vastly different. So, nomenclature is so important. And I think, really making sure that, Champagne is from France. It is a small growing region. It is really time in the bottle. So where Prosecco is 3 months to make, Champagne, 18 months by law and non-vintage, 36 months for a vintage. This time in the secondary fermentation, it really creates layers of flavors and complexity where you can't find in a Prosecco.
Yeah, champagne's the epitome of sparkling wine. Not all sparkling wines are champagne. I love that you're highlighting that.
And something I think, yes, I can't agree hard enough with you, because I think that is something I hear consistently on. Even just yesterday, I went through this kind of dialogue with a waiter at a table. So it's so funny that it's the first thing that you think of. But when I think about what you're saying, I think about how it relates to why champagne is more expensive. And it's a luxury item. And what makes a luxury item is you're paying for the luxury of time. That's consistent across every great luxury industry. So you're highlighting a real why behind why we pay for the honor of time in champagne, and I think that is a super selling point to why I'm attracted to champagne for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And champagne is emotional, right? It really can stir up the emotions, and part of that is you can't rush time. It really, really is something perfectly captured in a bottle.
I'm a big fan that the conversation about time with champagne. I mean, within the wine world, there's no other region where they have this luxury of time. I get frustrated. You go to, say, Burgundy or Bordeaux, and they're serving you very young wines. They're like, oh, these need a decade to age. Well, don't open them. But in Champagne, the winemakers, they release these wines when they're ready. And the amount of time, time is the greatest luxury in the world. We'll be talking about Moët Imperial. That is about 6 years from start to finish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's incredible. And I think when you talk about luxury, there's another thing. Perception about champagne is that champagne has to be for a special occasion, or you can't open champagne on a Monday. And champagne is 7 days a week. It can be breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
It really can.
It's not just an aperitif. And I also think when people are talking about champagne, it's also, what are you eating with champagne? Because champagne deserves a seat at the table. And, I think of champagne as a category as really the yellow highlighter of wine. You put champagne with anything, and because of the bubbles and the freshness and it really highlights whatever's on the table. And that's really important, from everything from a hot dog to a ribeye to more traditional pairings. I was on the San Francisco wine panel as a contributor for years, and when the Giants ballpark reopened, I was asked to pair ballpark food in editorial, and I put rosé champagne with the chili dog. And at the time, people were rebellious. They said champagne with a chili dog, and I stand firm in my conviction. Give me a sunny day, a baseball game, a chili dog, and a glass of rosé champagne, and it is the best pairing.
It makes me want a hot dog and a glass of rosé champagne really bad.
But it's so true, though. Champagne can cut through, not that there are more normal everyday foods, but you're talking about chili dog, pizzas, hamburgers, things that we just eat throughout the week. Champagne has the strength to cut through that and bring it to life. So I'm really aligned with this idea that it is the epitome of luxury. It's the epitome of approachable luxury, and at any moment you could pop a bottle.
Really approachable luxury, from from a chili dog all the way up to caviar. It is something that is just as prismatic as the things that it can be paired with.
So caviar on a chili dog, could that work?
I've had caviar and fried chicken with some Krug, and it was pretty delicious.
Okay. All
I
right.
want a Veuve Clicquot and a hamburger right now.
Also, one of my favorite pairings.
It's such a magical pairing. And the other thing, just about champagne is the bubbles, right? They're great for your palate after you eat something like a steak or a hamburger or fried chicken. Those bubbles cleanse your palate, and that acidity just washes everything clean. So every time you go to take a bite of your meal, it's like you have a fresh palate. And champagne's delicious. So.
And it's delicious. Oh, well, we're talking about how delicious it is. Another myth is really that champagne should be in a flute. So let's put it in a glass.
That's a good one. So let's talk about the glass. So if not a flute, what would you recommend?
Well, certainly just a all-purpose white wine glass. I think that, when you have the flute, it's not only the meniscus of how the opening, where it places the champagne on your palate. So I think it used to be that you had tasted sugar here and saltiness here, but that was disproven. And you have taste buds all over your mouth that taste all the five senses. So if you're tasting with a flute and the champagne is being dropped in the latter half of your mouth, then the party in the front of your mouth is completely missing out. So just a regular old wine glass.
I love it. And also the fact that you can smell the wine, the champagne's a wine, you can smell it more before you taste, and your sense of taste is directly linked to your sense of smell. So it heightens that experience for you. So if you're pouring a glass of Moët Imperial, you want to smell it as you're tasting it. And I think they say it's about 50% more that you can taste because you're smelling it as well. And with a flute, you can't really stick your nose in there. So a white wine glass.
We were talking about the light bulb, moment of champagne. Like, to me, I think it may have been having champagne in a proper glass and being like, oh, there's an aromatic component to this that I was not getting in a champagne flute.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I keep thinking all of the myths that you're talking about, to me, it just culminates into one big myth, which is that champagne is similar to other sparkling wines, and everything that we're talking about, it just continues to land home from me how different champagne is. And that why is so important, because that's why we pay the premiums we do. That's why it has the cult following that it does. It's not just a sparkling wine, and that these myths just all need to go away because they're not accurate.
It's magic in a bottle. It's worth the price. It's worth listing it on your menu, on your wine list, putting it on your shelf, ordering it. I mean, champagne is magic. It's that ultimate celebratory moment. And honestly, I like at the top of this question when you said, oh, I'm going to give you champagne, and here's a different sparkling wine. Not all sparkling wines are champagne. Champagne is the epitome.
Absolutely.
So in the last decade, Nicole, one of the things that we've seen in the on-trade specifically is a shift to focus on grower champagne. A lot of sommeliers and beverage directors out there have been, really fanning out over the grower champagne. And that has had an effect on the larger champagne houses like Moët and Veuve Clicquot, where there are these misconceptions that larger houses are just, quote, too big, quote. So you partner with a lot of the top accounts in New York City. Can you share the benefits for having a larger, like a Grand Marque, or a larger house like Moët or Veuve Clicquot on the list? What advice can you give?
It's really, that position is so myopic because Champagne is such a fragmented region that, the future of Champagne is very bright for everyone. And, Grand Marques like Veuve Clicquot and Moët and Chandon, they're leaders in their category because they have consistency, because our clientele, when they sit down and they're feeling overwhelmed by their day, they see these lighthouse heritage brands, and it just, every year they know that consistency is going to be there. And also something like, Moët and Chandon, they're leaders in research and development in Champagne. And this has led to better viticultural practices, which Champagne is a blended wine. This is the beauty of Champagne. So if you have a leader like Moët and Chandon and Veuve Clicquot, which are really investing in the region and R&D, and it translates down to better grapes, better harvesting in this very northern climate, which is traditionally so hard to grow grapes. And now with some climate change, it's just more unpredictable. this is really what grand marks can bring, not only to the region, but also within the bottle. It's really important to have them on the list.
I agree. And I also might add to what you said to say that recognition is there. So let's say the sommelier or the beverage director doesn't have to happen to be working that evening or at that brunch. It's going to sell because it is America's favorite champagne, Veuve Clicquot, and the world's most beloved champagne, Moët and Chandon. I mean, these brands are so recognizable.
I think there's a bottle of Moët and Chandon pop 1 second every minute.
second, right?
Every second.
It's a lot of bottles.
It's a lot of bottles.
And also the heritage as well, and in just a bit, we'll get behind the bottle and talk about some of these incredible stories and all of that history, that heritage, but that's also part of it as well.
When you have a heritage brand that has 250, or celebrating their 250th anniversary, like Veuve Clicquot, it's really something that is a testament not only to the time we talked about in the bottle, but to the vision and really the future of what they can contribute.
They're really good at making the wine. They've
They're
been
really
making
good.
it for
Really
a long
good.
time.
Making it for a long
Exactly.
time.
Yeah.
And also heritage with 250 years.
Yeah.
The vineyards that we own, they're vineyards that were selected for particular characteristics, whether it be from Madame Clicquot, and this is transmitted in the bottle today.
It truly is. Now let's talk about, we've talked a lot about food, but let's get into innovative food pairings. Have you seen anything in New York with champagne and food that you want to share with the world? What have you seen?
I mean, I think it's really exciting right now to see. I mean, this is not necessarily innovative, but champagne and omakase is something that is such an incredible pairing. But as I see more chefs opening omakase in New York, what I'm really seeing is that you're starting with traditional sashimi or sushi, but then you're going in to whether Wagyu. And I think that this is really where I see pushing the limits of champagne and richer, bolder styles that can be a little bit more carnivorous. And I think that, really pushing the envelope, not with omakase, but showing people that can also pair really well with these rich meats is something that I just see percolating up around town.
I do love how I feel like a lot of Japanese restaurants have expanded their champagne lists. I mean, maybe 10, 15 years ago, you didn't see a lot of champagne on these lists. And to me, champagne is the, sushi of wine.
Absolutely.
And sushi is the champagne of food. So yeah, I'm all for that. Yeah.
I love the light that is like streaming out of your eyes as you're talking about this. You can really tell. You can really tell that you love
He
this.
loves omakase.
This is also
and
why you must
sushi.
love Krug as well, because
So for my
Krug and sushi
birthday,
go so well together. right?
we have an omakase dinner with a bottle of Krug Grand Cuvée every year. So there you go.
There you go.
Magical. Well, Nicole, we have our signature question for you.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Shoot, I'm
Are
ready.
you ready? All right. What is one lesson that your career has taught you that you think everyone should learn at some point in their life?
Great question. I think that over my tenure, you have highs, you have growing opportunities and moments. It's really the people that you surround yourself with. And you have to wake up every day and be inspired to be the best you can. And I really feel that inspirational and having words of encouragement from mentors or fellow colleagues is important. And in turn, it's just as important to pass that forward. So that's what I try to bring to the table. That's how people have supported me in my career, in my community. And it's a great lesson that bring everyone along.
Pass it forward.
Pass it forward.
Well, thank
Very
you for
cool.
sharing that advice. And now it's time to get in the hot seat.
Are you ready?
Oh, are we going to turn off the
I
heat?
think we should turn towards each other as well, so we're prepared. Okay. All right. So what are we doing? We are about to get flambéed. So these are going to be rapid fire questions. They're just geared to get to know you better and have a good time.
Sounds great.
All right. Let's do it. So I'm going to start off with something easy. Champagne. You already answered it. Flute or white wine glass?
White wine glass.
So you're already good. Manhattan or Brooklyn?
Brooklyn.
Okay, I should. So, favorite ballet, Rite of Spring or Swan Lake?
Ooh, a pagan ballet, definitely Rite of Spring.
Oh my God. I was like, oh God, which one's a pagan ballet? I don't know. Scuba diving or free diving?
Scuba diving, more time under the water.
Hey now, of course. So here's some questions about pairings. So Clicquot with a burger or Clicquot with a cheese plate?
Burger for life.
Agleen is very happy that you said that. You guys remember Agleen from last week's episode. Okay, Krug, drinking Krug and listening to a passionate piano concerto or listening to a minimalist synth pop piece?
Ooh, minimalist synth pop piece.
Moët by the poolside or Moët tableside?
Poolside.
Dom Perignon Rosé or Blanc?
Rosé Blanc. I guess I'll take them both. I can't decide. I want it all.
The answer's and. The answer's and. And then finally, what is your go-to toast or cheers?
Well, it's a little bit of a mashup, but I love may the wind always be at your back, may your friends always be by your side, and may your pain always be champagne.
Cheers to all our pains being champagnes. And you've been flambéed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Feeling a little warm.
I'm sure.
And now it's time to go behind the bottles of America's favorite champagne, Veuve Clicquot, and the world's most beloved champagne, Moët and Chandon. But before we do, we're talking about champagne bottles. And opening a champagne bottle sometimes can strike fear in champagne drinkers.
It's terrifying.
People find it terrifying,
It's terrifying.
sometimes, right? So I think we should start by sharing how to elegantly and easily open a bottle of champagne. How does that sound?
That's a very important thing.
All right, let's go,
The
Rich.
opening
Let's
of
do it.
champagne. Let's do it.
So why is it important, Rich?
Well, there's quite a bit of pressure in here. And like, I don't want to scare people, because this is what we're talking about. We don't want people to be scared opening champagne, but we kind of have to respect the pressure behind this cork. It's the same amount of pressure as a tire on a double-decker bus.
Oh, wow.
Fun fact.
That's a lot of pressure.
There you go.
So yeah, we definitely don't want to shake this up before we...
Don't shake it up.
Don't shake it up.
Nope.
And beware when you see someone else opening a
my
bottle
goodness.
that's pointed straight at you. Duck.
Duck and stand away. Move. In all seriousness, no, with opening a bottle, you do want to be really careful. We're going to share some easy tips. If you are listening, great, but we'd love for you to watch. So go to YouTube, turn on this video, and we're going to show you how to easily open these bottles. The first thing we want to check is the temperature. This is nice and cold, right?
It's pretty chilly.
Pretty
Yep.
chilly. Well, we want around 50, 55 degrees for the bottle. The chilling of the bottle brings the pressure down inside the bottle, so it's less likely to
Explode.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Now, the first step in successfully opening a champagne bottle is to identify where the foil tab is. So on Moët, it's got a nice little black line. I believe you have 3 comets for Veuve Clicquot, Rich.
Exactly. That's true.
So it's a foil tab. You just pull that out and pull it along the perforation.
Now I know. I think the Guild Somm regulation is that you use the knife on your wine key. I do chuckle at that because we spend a lot of time making this foil. It's super easy to peel off. So
It's very easy to
you
peel
go.
off. They've double perforated it for you. So
No
you're
now
good
that-
to go.
tool needed.
there is one.
No tools
we do
needed.
need to talk about. There's one kind of variation, right?
Dom Perignon.
Dom Perignon does not have a nice little pull tab, and so you literally just pretend the foil is not there. Put your finger through it to get the cage.
Talk about easy.
Easy
Super
peasy.
easy.
Yeah.
So now we have our cage and our cork exposed. We've peeled off the foil, and we want to locate what Rich just said, the key. And the key is a little metal circle that we are going to pull out from the bottle. So we're just sticking our thumb and pulling that out. Now, what I'm doing right now is I've actually moved my thumb on top of the cage and cork. This is for safety. All right, so safety first. So I've pulled out the key now, and we're going to turn this
6 times.
6 times. In what direction, Laura?
This way.
Counterclockwise.
Yeah.
Nailed it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. It's always 6.
And every bottle of champagne is always 6.
It's always 6. And now we are going to leave the cage on the bottle, but we're going to loosen it from the lip of the neck of the bottle.
Why are we doing that?
Well, because we are going to leave the cage on to give us a nice grip on the cork, and also it's good for safety. Sometimes bottles can be a little slippery. They might be a little bit wet.
Perfect.
Gives your hand a nice grip there. Rich and I are both holding the bottle at 45 degrees, and we're not aiming it at each other. So we're going to
Do we want to aim at each other?
I don't think so.
Oh, no.
I like my eyes.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, we don't. Yes, of course.
And Rich, what are we going to turn?
that's, to me, this is the big important aspect of opening champagne. Is when I originally learned how to open champagne as a youngster, you were turning the cork, and that's the wrong way to do it.
Don't
because
turn the cork.
At a certain point, you're going to have to kind of let go to readjust your grip, and that cork might pop at that point. So we're going to turn from the bottom of the bottle.
Turning the bottle.
Yeah, so the hand holding the cork at the top is really not doing anything. Just kind of holding the cork nice and firm, and we're turning from the bottom.
So repeat after me. Turn the bottle.
Turn the bottle.
Not the cork.
Not the
All
cork.
right, let's do it. Let's pop open these bottles.
Turn the,
And we're going to have a nice hiss.
Now, when it does pop,
Oh, that was a good hiss.
That was
yeah,
a
not to
good
mess up
hiss.
your audio there, but I like to keep that cork kind of in place for like a half a second, because I find that if I take the cork away too fast, I often may get a little bit of wine coming out. So kind of let it pop, hold that cork there for like a half a second. I mean, this little bottle's been sitting here with this cork in it, with that pressure behind it for months, years in many cases. So just,
There you go.
yeah.
I think it's funny how terrified I was, because now I feel completely comfortable doing it. So another misconception, I think,
it's
for
really
sure.
easy to open a bottle once you have all those tips that you just
Absolutely.
shared.
Yeah.
And I think that the more you open a bottle of champagne, the easier it does become. So
That's why you should
what is
drink
the
as much
key
champagne as
lesson?
possible.
Just drink champagne. It
Practice
becomes
makes
easy.
perfect.
So what are we tasting today?
Ooh, we're not only tasting, we're going to be learning about Moët and Chandon, about the brand, and about their incredible best-selling hero mark, Imperial, and Veuve Clicquot, the incredible story. We're going to learn about all about the Veuve and Yellow Label. How's that sound?
Great.
Let's go behind the bottle.
I want to go first.
Okay.
Thank you, Rich.
I've never disagreed with you. Yeah, go ahead.
I love Moët. I love the brand. It's so fun and engaging, and the history behind the name is actually really great. So obviously it's pronounced Moët. The reason it's pronounced Moët is because the name is Dutch in origin, and it's a bit of a love story actually between a father and his children. So Jean Remy, who is actually quite influential within Moët's history, he's responsible for sort of bringing champagne to the world. He said that he wanted to share the magic of champagne with the world, which I love. But when he retired in 1833, he left his beautiful company to his children. And I keep thinking of the memory you had of drinking champagne with your mom, and not the memory, but the hope for that. So Moët is a beautiful, that's how it became Moët and Chandon. So it's one of my favorite parts about the brand.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic story. And I'm glad that you mentioned the name, because this is a brand name that gets mispronounced quite frequently. So you do hit the T. So you say Moët.
So when I say Mo, you say
Wet.
Mo.
Wet.
Mo.
Wet.
Cleared.
Good. No way. After today, no way
You will ever say Moët.
No way.
Queen was wrong. He says a Moët, and right?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, we're not saying Moët though.
Moët.
Moët.
I said it on my first day at work, and that was the only time I've ever said it.
Well, people think they're really saying it. They want to say it correctly. And so it's really, it's just nod to the heritage.
Exactly. That the umlaut, the two dots over the E, are what signify that you pronounce the T in French. So the umlaut signifies pronouncing that consonant.
But
So hit that T.
Clicquot also gets mispronounced a lot,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, I mean, we have these two flagship champagnes with slightly difficult names, I guess. So Veuve, that's I think the part that tricks up a lot of people. Veuve. And we worked with some of our French colleagues to figure out, having them pronounce it, and then us kind of thinking about it, and realizing that it rhymes with love, which actually ties back nicely to Laura's point about Moët and the love as well. So Veuve rhymes with love, and it means widow in French. And in fact, on the little cap, after you open the bottle, there's a little portrait of Madame Clicquot, the widow Clicquot. But there you go. So Veuve rhymes with love. When I say Veuve, you say?
Veuve.
Veuve. The widow lost
I
her
was
love.
hoping you'd say love, actually. When I say Veuve, you say?
Love.
Love.
There you go. Thank you.
Sorry,
Everybody
I left
listening.
you
We're
out
good.
there.
Exactly.
One more time.
When I say Veuve, you say?
Love.
Okay.
Nailed it.
Well, half the battle is knowing how to pronounce it, right? Because that drives comfort. You're more likely to talk about it.
You're more likely to order it
More
off
likely
of
to
a
order it.
Absolutely.
wine list.
Yeah. So Moët, and Veuve Clicquot.
Brilliant.
Let's taste.
Let's taste.
Ooh, yes.
Should we start with, we'll do Moët Imperial. That's on our left.
I think that's
Is that
good.
right?
Laura, can you tell us about
Yeah.
Moët, the style? What's in this glass?
So Moët is like biting into a crisp green apple. It's bright, it's fruity, but don't write it off, because when you experience it, it has a really seductive palate to it, and it also has a maturity to it, which I think develops as you experience it further. So take it. Oh, cheers.
Yeah,
Sweet
let's
cheers.
try.
May all your pains be champagnes.
Cheers.
What do you think when you experience it?
I love the fact you mentioned this bright fruitiness. At the same time, there's that brightness, and it's also very dry. I mean, this is one of the driest of the Grand Marque champagnes out there. I do feel like 20, 30 years ago, champagne was a much sweeter style, and it has moved much drier. And like I said, Moët Imperial is one of the driest on the shelf right now in terms of the non-vintage Grand Marques.
And what do we mean by dry?
Dry meaning not sweet.
Exactly.
And we talked about food pairings, earlier, and to me, that brightness and that dryness, that crisp quality, really works great with food.
Absolutely.
So it's super versatile right here.
I love the harmony of Moët and Chandon Imperial. It's just such a harmonious blend, and whether it's the art of blending or the way the varietals, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Meunier, all play together, it really shines in the glass. It's very, very versatile when food pairing.
Yeah, it's an equal blend of the three grape varieties. So to me, it truly epitomizes that Champagne region in a glass. I feel like I'm in Champagne.
It's the ambassador of the Champagne region.
And I love to taste it against Clicquot, because I think the freshness of this really highlights how much there's a complexity that I experience when I drink Clicquot, but I know that it's something you're pretty powerful about.
Clicquot?
Exactly.
Have a comparison here. Well, cheers.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
May all your troubles turn into bubbles. That nose.
So there always is this brightness to champagne, But to me, with Clicquot, we're doing a slightly different, fruit salad, fruit basket. And so it's Moët to me is like green apple, Granny Smith. This is a little bit more red apple, maybe some apple pie type notes, some baked apple. Another way I think about these two is Moët to me is like springtime, and then Clicquot is fall. It's got a bit more of this kind of toastier. There's yeastiness in both, but in the Clicquot we have a bit more toasted yeast. Toasted bread, brioche, things like that.
I think it sits far more on the rich spectrum of, and throughout our portfolio, where Moët is sitting far more on that beautiful fresh side.
There's a lot of, and even though these both look like clear wines, that they're red fruits in the Clicquot, not just in the red apple spectrum, but it really carries over to plums and some cherry notes. What you can get red fruit out of this, and I think that's really a key note with when you're pairing with food. And why we were talking about champagne and pairing with more savory meats and heavier. This is also a perfect champagne for fall dishes, beef bourguignon, or
and cheeseburgers.
and
We're
cheeseburgers.
very hungry in this episode. So we've talked about a lot of food, but Pinot Noir, the Pinot Noir driven style of Clicquot, it's over half of the blend. And people think about Pinot Noir still wine with food, right? I mean, raise your hand if you've tried Pinot Noir, right? It's a well-known still wine, and it's beautifully showcased here in Clicquot.
And I think also, when you were sitting down at a table, it's really interesting to say, oh, what would you like to have tonight, a white or a red? To say, if I love Chardonnay or I love Pinot Noir, don't forget about Champagne, because these are some of the key varietals in both of these.
You get the best
Grand
of both
Marques.
worlds.
Best of both worlds.
If I was a member of the trade, my goal is to surprise and delight every guest I have, and I can't think of an easier way than to challenge, like to do what you just did, to say, I know you're thinking this, but I need to make a recommendation for you that is going to change the way you experience this food. So surprise and delight and champagne and service, they go hand in hand.
really impactful experiences.
Absolutely. So what about some fun historical facts? You know, we love fun facts.
Well, I'm going to go first.
I was really going to jump in and go first this time. Go ahead, please.
Obviously, Moët, right? It's called the Imperial Range, and this is a salute to Napoleon. Napoleon loved Moët. He actually said that champagne helped to lament your losses and to celebrate your wins. And in 1869, which would have been his 100th birthday, Moët, as a tribute to him and how much he loved the brand, they named the Imperial Range after him. So it's a little bit of fun facts for you and what we owe to Napoleon.
I feel like he was the first celebrity endorser, right?
He was the first Instagram. He was the first Instagrammer.
Exactly. Yeah.
Influencer.
Yeah, but that is a great point. I mean, he was, the most powerful man in Europe at the time, and he was claiming Moët as his favorite wine. I mean, that's
pretty
tremendous.
impactful.
Yes.
So 1869, Imperial is launched. 1877. Clicquot launches the yellow label. And I think this is fun for both of these brands that they've been making them for so long.
Right.
And every day they're trying to make these gradual improvements to this wine. They've gotten really good at it. I think that's a lovely kind of takeaway there. Fun historical facts about Clicquot. I can't think of anything. Oh my God, everything about this house. There's a book called The Widow Clicquot. I'd recommend anyone to go out there and find
Order
it and read
now.
about it. Yeah, I have a bit of a crush on Madame Clicquot. Her story is super compelling. She takes over the house in 1805 as a widow. She's 27 years old. She has this young daughter. It's really one of the worst times to take over a champagne house for a number of reasons. I will not get into that right now in this podcast. You have to read the book.
Read the book.
Read the book. But she takes this little tiny winery project, and when she passes away at the age of 89, which is noteworthy in itself, she's created one of the grand marks in the Champagne region. And innovation. I mean, the first to do a blended rosé, the first to do vintage. So when you're in a wine store and you see a year on the champagne label, be like, thanks, Madame Clicquot. And she introduces the riddling rack, which basically takes champagne from being a wine that had sediment in it, back in the day, the yeast sediment, to becoming this crystal clear wine. And so innovation galore at the House of Clicquot.
What a bold spirit.
Right?
Yes.
Didn't she say?
Audacious,
I was going to
I
say,
think would be the right word.
yeah, she live with audacity.
Yes, exactly. And she's known as the mother of champagne, truly, because of the innovations that Rich just mentioned. I mean, champagne wouldn't be what it is today without her audacious innovations and thinking differently, which was not easy. I mean, we have to talk about this as women in the wines and spirits industry. I mean, this woman was one of the first modern business women. And this happened at a time where women...
global business person.
A person.
And what she did was bigger than... Sorry.
It's huge. No, I love it. And now time for the debate. No, I'm kidding. No, absolutely.
So
You're
in love
absolutely
with
right.
it.
Yeah.
It's so true. And this was a time where women were viewed actually as property of their husbands and their families. They weren't counted in the census. They weren't counted. They weren't allowed to have bank accounts. You have to really put yourself in the mindset of the time in which she lived, and for her to be this audacious and
The courage
and
to have that entrepreneurial spirit.
Read the book.
Read the book.
We really should be getting some money from the author. By the way, we have no connection to the author who wrote the book, The Widow Clicquot.
It's true.
But we probably should.
But we admire you to learn.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting. They have so much as brands that make them so unique. But Rich and I were actually discussing last week something that we feel they have in common. Do you remember? He's like, no, I don't remember.
Exactly. I'm blanking.
You sort of mentioned it earlier, but going back to this theme of misconception.
Oh, right.
Right?
Yeah.
This theme of misconception, I think there is a huge misconception that you know it. Do you know what I mean? That you go into an account with it, or you try to get a chef to imagine it in a food, and people think I know it, and it kind of gets. I'm speaking for Moët, but it doesn't get the credit it maybe deserves because we think we're so familiar with it. And I think that's a huge disservice to the magnitude of excellence that Moët embodies. I mean, my God, just think about the access that Moët has. Yeah. We have access to 100% of all the Grand Crus. We have access to 70 Grand Crus in Champagne. We have 70% of the premium crus.
The Premier Cru,
and that doesn't even take into account the 200 plus years of excellence and credibility in crafting this incredible product. So my biggest pitch for Moët is you must give it, refamiliarize yourself with why it is the most beloved champagne in the world. You don't just get that title out of nowhere, and it's a huge disservice to every consumer out there to not give this champagne the due that it deserves.
And Rich, you mentioned something about the heritage of these brands and how the winemakers, each time they go to make these blends, because it's a blend, it's non-vintage, that they're tweaking it and making it better and better. Mm-hmm. So I would add to that to say, if you haven't tasted Moët Imperial or Veuve Clicquot Yellow Label in a minute, crack open a bottle. What are you waiting for?
Yeah.
Taste these champagnes with a renewed sense of passion, because they are impeccably crafted. And Moët is, at the helm of Moët, our head winemaker, which is known as a chef de cave in Champagne, is Benoit Goez, and he is the most awarded winemaker, not champagne maker, most awarded winemaker on planet Earth. Mm-hmm. Talk about credibility.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for both these houses, we've seen just so much innovation over the past 20, 30 years in Champagne, but especially these two houses. So anyone who hasn't tasted these wines in 5, 10 years, so much has changed.
Mm-hmm. So much has changed. The climate is changing. Our viticulture, we talked about earlier, is getting more sophisticated. So when you open up these bottles, this is contemporary champagne at its very finest.
Mm-hmm. And we're missing a big topic, talking about the vineyards, but in terms of sustainability, you talked about how Moët was so pioneering and really pushing the region. And within Moët Hennessy, I feel like our Champagne group is really pushing sustainability in the Champagne region.
Absolutely.
And I will go out on a limb and say that I feel like the Champagne region has become the greenest region within wine on planet Earth right now, especially for its size, which, that's incredible.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It really, wasn't, and then said, let's get this together. And now the region as its whole is embodying such green practices and really pushing the limits. It's a leader within the wine world.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. This is not your grandfather's champagne.
Mm-mm.
That was Prosecco.
That was Prosecco.
That was bourbon for my grandfather.
I think that's when I think about if what is the one thing, about Moët?
Distill it down.
I'm going to. It's the champagne of Champagne. Yeah. And it is in every way you can understand that statement. It's the champagne of the region Champagne, in that, you said it earlier, it most holistically sources all the 3 different grape varietals. It's the region in a glass. But I also mean it in the sense that it is the most classic version of a champagne that exists, and that should be beloved and revered, and I love it.
And everywhere.
That shines through.
It does.
You have very good taste.
Oh, thank you.
And I would say for Clicquot, to me, the yellow label is all about their artistry of blending. This is all about, often about 50% of this bottle is their reserve wine going back 15 to 20 years. It is an amazing blending exercise, and it's an ode to their cellars, if you will. And it's this lovely balance of kind of elegance and structure. We talked about Pinot Noir. Pinot Noir brings all that structure to the wine. And so it's this kind of, balance of elegance and structure and sunshine as well. It's a very warm, this is autumn, warm sunshine, and it's kind of reflected on the color of the label as well.
I think it's really difficult to get the power of Pinot Noir and harness it in that elegant way. And Yellow Label does that consistently year after year.
Yeah. And we've talked about consistency a couple times. It is amazing because this is such an inconsistent region in terms of weather. Yeah. And I love that as well. Mm-hmm. They're passionate about consistency, but super inconsistent.
They have it all. Rain, hail.
Exactly.
Frost.
And on the consistency note, we hadn't really talked about non-vintage, but both of these are non-vintages, which by definition has to epitomize the house style of these two houses. So Moët and Chandon Imperial epitomizes the house style, the classic house style, as you said, Laura. And Veuve Clicquot Yellow Label, this is what Clicquot is all about. It's about that power of Pinot Noir. So consistency, it's really hard to craft these year in and year out because it's a difficult region with lots of hurdles and lots of rules and regulations. So that consistency in a non-vintage, which is a non-vintage is
A blend of
It's a
multiple
blend.
years.
A blend.
very good. Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, incredible.
Well, cheers
Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers to champagne.
to these iconic houses.
Cheers, everyone. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Nicole. It's been an absolute pleasure. Wow, what a show today.
I love her.
This has been so much fun.
She's so great.
Nicole is
Nicole's the best.
fantastic.
Yeah.
She's the best.
She really is.
Yeah. It's been a great discussion. We've talked a lot about the world's most famous wine. I mean, I've really enjoyed this thorough discussion. And as I like to do, I think we need to share our 3 takeaways, what we were inspired by. What do you think?
Yeah.
I'm going to go first.
Oh, no, you didn't.
Changing it
Shocker.
up. All right.
I think we've answered the question of why champagne is at a premium to other sparkling wines. Because the struggle is real.
It's very real.
The climate's difficult. The fruit has to be hand harvested. They have tons of rules. I think it's like 273 pages of rules and regulations. This is a process that is time and labor intensive. It's not just months. We're talking about years. To make that bottle of Moët Imperial, it's about 6 years really from start to finish when you add it all up. And, all this together, yields this wine that has, great consistent quality, tiny bubbles, complexity, and, it's all about joy and pleasure. Yeah.
Well said. Couldn't agree more.
When I think about a major takeaway from today, I think about the 2 beautiful brands that we spent the episode diving into, right? Moët and Chandon and Veuve Clicquot. And here's the simplest statement I can say. They are the most trusted champagne brands in the world, hands down. Consumers, when they see these brands, they feel they know them, they trust them, they choose them. So if I am in the trade, if I own a retail store, if I have a beautiful restaurant and I'm building out a menu, I am putting these brands on the shelf, I am putting them on the menu, and I'm recommending them to my guest. The value add to the people within our industry is astronomical. And I think it's something that can't be ignored. The power of the trust that these brands bring to everything they interact with.
That's a really valid point. Yeah, luxury of choice for
They're
America's
right. Don't
most
limit the
favorite
consumer.
champagne and the world's most beloved champagne. You
Yeah.
can't go wrong. They are so trusted.
Because if they see them, and this is not to say other brands aren't wonderful, and there are other brands in the world, but to your point, let the consumer choose. Because I promise you, if you let the consumer choose, they will choose these brands, and that's just fact.
True statement.
Hey.
All right,
Bringing
well, the pressure is on for point number 3.
Exactly.
And Nicole said this. Champagne is such a sensorial experience, right? The minute you hear that bottle pop, if you're at a restaurant, you want to be a part of whatever that celebration is, right? You hear that pop, fizz, clink. I mean, the champagne experience is like no other. It highlights your 5 senses in a way that no other wine or honestly other product can do. So it should be on every wine list, to your point, Laura. It is so patiently crafted, to your point, Rich. The champagne experience is like no other. It is the epitome of sparkling wine, and it's the epitome of celebration.
I want more. More champagne.
More champagne.
Thank you so much for putting this together. This was a really special episode.
This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Super fun. Super bubbly.
Like, follow, subscribe.
YouTube and Instagram.
Excellent. Thank you.
See you next time.
Bye.